I never thought my first semester at college would be memorable for anything other than awkward. Icebreakers and late-night pizza runs. I came to Ravenwood University for freedom, for the chance to reinvent myself away from the quiet, suffocating streets of my hometown. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm 19. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind where everybody knows your business before you even have a chance to speak. Coming here felt like stepping into another world, a place where I could vanish into the crowd. The first week was everything I imagined. Bustling hallways, professors with unreadable expressions, and the constant aroma of coffee drifting from every corner of campus. My dorm was small but functional, half mine, half shared with my roommate Haley. She was everything I wasn't: outgoing, effortlessly charming, and someone who could make friends in a single glance. I kept to myself, quietly navigating the campus, trying not to draw attention. Everything seemed normal, until the second night. I woke up at exactly 3:12 a.m. to a faint sound, barely audible, but unmistakable. At first I thought it was Haley moving around, but when I glanced over, she was fast asleep, earbuds in, chest rising and falling evenly. Then it came again, a whisper, soft and deliberate, saying my name. Sarah. I froze. My first instinct was that I was dreaming. My second thought was that someone was playing a prank through the thin dorm walls. But when I pressed my ear against the wall, there was only silence. And the strangest part? It didn't feel like the sound was coming from outside the room. It felt like it was inside the room. I told myself I was imagining things. A new environment, stress, exhaustion. My brain was playing tricks. But the whispers persisted, night after night, always at the same hour. Haley noticed it too on the third night, her eyes wide, breath shallow. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I nodded, reluctant to confirm it aloud. That was the first moment I realized. Ravenwood University wasn't going to be the fresh start I had hoped for. Something here was watching me. Days passed, and I tried to throw myself into routine. Classes, cafeteria lunches, library sessions. I clung to normalcy. But normalcy, I discovered, is fragile. One Thursday afternoon, I stayed late in the library working on a literature paper. The building was quiet, eerily so, as if the usual hum of students and computers had vanished. I settled into my favorite corner, near the stacks of old books, the smell of dust and paper familiar and oddly comforting. Then I felt it, a cold breeze brushing against the back of my neck. I turned quickly, expecting Haley or another student. But the library was empty. My heart raced, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. And then I heard it again, a soft whisper, urgent, unmistakable. "Sarah." I bolted from the library, my pulse hammering in my ears, the empty hallway stretching endlessly before me. Even the streetlights on campus seemed dimmer than usual, casting elongated shadows that twisted unnaturally. By the time I reached my dorm, I was breathless, heart pounding. Haley looked at me with concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, half laughing. I didn't tell her. I couldn't. Words like "someone is watching me" sounded insane. So I stayed quiet, retreating to my room, locking the door behind me, feeling eyes on me even in the safety of four walls. The following week, I discovered strange things. Flyers appeared overnight, old, yellowed paper with messages scrawled in black ink. Watched. I tore them down, shoved them into my backpack, my stomach twisting with fear. I couldn't explain it, but I knew someone was leaving them intentionally. And every day, the whispers grew bolder, creeping into the hallways, classrooms, even the cafeteria. Then came the night of the storm. Rain pelted the dorm windows, and the wind rattled the shutters. I was alone, Haley having stayed at her boyfriend's apartment. The whispers returned, louder, almost frantic. I paced the room, the shadows in the corners stretching unnaturally. And then I saw movement, just a blur at the edge of my vision, a shadow that wasn't Haley's. A figure standing in the hallway outside my door, watching. I froze, my breath caught. The doorknob rattled slightly, but I knew no one was supposed to be out there. I grabbed my phone, ready to call security, but it slipped from my hands, clattering to the floor. The shadow disappeared instantly, leaving only silence. My hands trembled as I dialed, but there was no signal. My room, my dorm, my sanctuary, it felt like a cage. The next morning, I noticed something strange in the cafeteria. A student I had never seen before sat at the edge of the room, staring directly at me. His eyes were dark, unblinking, and a small smirk played across his lips. When I tried to approach, he vanished into the crowd, as if he had never been there. I told myself it was coincidence. It had to be. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Over the next few days, I began noticing subtle signs everywhere. A locker left slightly ajar, messages carved into bathroom stalls in handwriting I didn't recognize, shadows flickering just out of my peripheral vision, and every night the whispers called my name, guiding me, teasing me, threatening me. I became obsessed. I started documenting everything, taking notes in a small, worn notebook. Each entry was a mixture of fear and disbelief. I didn't know if I was being paranoid or if something genuinely sinister had embedded itself in the very fabric of the campus. One evening, I decided to follow the trail. The whispers had led me before, and I thought if I could trace them back to their source, I could finally confront whatever or whoever it was. I left my dorm after dark, the storm clouds still heavy above, lightning illuminating the empty campus in fleeting bursts. The quad was deserted, eerie, and every shadow seemed alive. "Sarah!" The voice came again, clearer, urgent. My pace quickened, and that's when I saw him. A man, tall, obscured in shadow, standing at the edge of the quad, watching. His presence was magnetic, terrifying. I froze, feeling the pull of fear and curiosity intertwine. Before I could react, he vanished into the night, as if swallowed by the darkness itself. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I stayed, trembling, listening. The whispers stopped, replaced by a silence that felt heavier than the storm. Returning to my dorm, I knew one thing. My life at Ravenwood University had changed forever. The freedom I sought, the escape from my small-town life, had turned into a labyrinth of fear and mystery. Something or someone was here, watching, waiting, and I wasn't ready for what came next. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I realized that this was only the beginning. The whispers weren't just a warning, they were an invitation. And for reasons I didn't yet understand, I couldn't ignore them. Because in the shadows of Ravenwood University, the line between reality and nightmare was thinner than I had ever imagined. And the moment I stepped onto this campus, I had already crossed it. The morning after the storm, I woke with a sense of dread curling around my chest. The events of the previous night, seeing him, hearing the whispers, had left an imprint that coffee and classes couldn't wash away. Ravenwood University had felt like freedom. Now it felt like a trap. I tried to focus in my morning lectures, but every shadow in the classroom, every glance from the hallways outside made my skin crawl. I couldn't explain it. My friends, even Haley, seemed oblivious to the tension, to the unseen eyes that followed me. Maybe it was me, I told myself. Maybe I had been imagining everything. But deep down I knew I hadn't. After classes, I decided to take a detour through the old quad, the one behind the science buildings. Most students avoided it. It was quiet, overshadowed by tall, gnarled trees, and had an eerie stillness that made people uneasy. I needed answers, or at least a sense of control. As I walked, the wind whispered through the leaves, sounding almost like murmured voices. And then I saw it. A scrap of paper pinned to the trunk of a tree, fluttering as though it had been waiting for me. I approached cautiously. Written in dark, jagged letters were 3 words. "Look closer, Sarah." My heart pounded. I glanced around, half expecting to see someone hiding in the shadows. But the quad was empty. Taking a deep breath, I unfolded the paper. Beneath the message was a small drawing, an outline of the dorm where I lived. My dorm. The drawing was crude, but the window that was lit inside my room was circled. A cold chill ran down my spine. Someone had been watching me. That night I barely slept. I sat by the window, notebook in hand, trying to piece together the events, tracing the timeline, writing every whisper, every shadow, every unsettling glance. I didn't know why I was being targeted, but the consistency terrified me. The whispers weren't random, they were deliberate. Haley noticed my growing obsession. "You can't keep doing this to yourself," she said one evening, her voice soft but firm. "You're imagining things. You're exhausted, Sarah." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to close my notebook, ignore the signs, and pretend that Ravenwood was just a normal college. But I couldn't, not anymore. A few days later, the pattern became undeniable. Every time I passed certain areas, library corners, quiet hallways, the back of the quad, there were small signs, a misplaced backpack, a scrap of paper, even a book left open with a single word underlined, alone. I confided in my literature professor, Dr. Hammond, hoping for guidance. He was older, sharp-eyed, and had a way of seeing through pretenses. "Sarah," he said, reading my trembling hands and notebook, "sometimes the mind amplifies fear, but if these are real threats, the first step is documenting and observing. Be methodical. Don't act rashly." I nodded, trying to absorb his calm authority, but inside, panic surged. Methodical observation wasn't enough when the stalker seemed to anticipate my every move. One evening, I stayed late in the library again, pretending to work on an essay while actually scanning the room. Listening, watching, the clock ticked past midnight. That's when I saw it, a flash of movement near the stacks, just at the edge of my vision. I froze. Then the voice came, distinct and urgent, carrying through the silence. "Sarah." "Follow." My stomach twisted. I hesitated, debating whether to obey or run. But something compelled me forward, deeper into the maze of shelves. The voice guided me to a hidden corner of the library, behind a tall, dusty bookshelf. There, pinned to the wall, were dozens of photographs, me, captured at various points in my life, from childhood birthday parties to the dorm lounge just last week. Every photo had my eyes circled in red. Every image stared back at me, accusing, watching. Panic surged, and I backed away, bumping into the shelf. A book fell with a thud, revealing a small note. "You can't hide, Sarah." I ran, out of the library, across the campus, back to the dorm, locking the door behind me. Haley's concern was palpable. "You're scaring me," she whispered. "What's going on?" I don't know how to explain," I stammered, but I realized I couldn't tell her everything. I had to figure it out first. The stalker was clever, patient, and always one step ahead. Over the next week, I became hyper-aware. Every dorm room, every hallway, every classroom, places that once felt familiar, felt like traps. I started noticing patterns in the whispers, the timing, the phrasing, even the locations. It was like a game, cruel and intricate, and the more I learned, the more I feared what would happen if I failed. Then came the message that terrified me most, taped to my dorm door in the dead of night, in jagged, hurried letters. "Meet me midnight, quad." I stared at it for hours, heart pounding. I didn't want to go. Every rational part of me screamed to call campus security, to run, to lock myself in my room forever. But curiosity, fear, and something I couldn't name drew me forward. At midnight, I wrapped myself in a hoodie and slipped out. Every step careful, deliberate, eyes scanning for movement. The quad was drenched in moonlight and shadow, the storm from earlier days having left puddles that reflected the eerie glow. I reached the center. Silence. Nothing. And then, footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling me. "Sarah." The whisper was everywhere. Behind me, in front of me, inside my head. I spun, trying to locate it. And finally, I saw a figure, a silhouette against the shadows. Just beyond the fountain, unnervingly still. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. My feet were frozen. And then I noticed something chilling. The figure lifted a hand and pointed directly at me. A voice, clear, deliberate, human, cut through the silence. "You've seen too much. Now it's your choice. Keep running. Or follow me." My breath caught. The air around me seemed to thicken, pressing in. I realized in that moment that everything up to now, The whispers, the shadows, the cryptic notes was only the beginning. The real nightmare was just starting, and somewhere deep inside, a small, terrified part of me whispered back. I had no choice. My heart pounded as I stared at the figure across the quad. The air was thick with tension, the silence of the campus amplified by the pounding of my own pulse. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape, but some strange part of me, curious and terrified, made me take a step forward. "Follow me," the figure said again, his voice calm but cold, sending a shiver down my spine. I hesitated, my mind racing. Who was he? Why had he been stalking me? And most importantly, why me? The whispers, the notes, the photos, they all led here to him. Finally, driven by a mix of fear and determination, I followed. He led me through the darkened campus, past familiar halls that now felt sinister and alien, until we reached the edge of the forest behind Ravenwood. The trees loomed like giants, their shadows twisting in the moonlight, creating shapes that seemed almost alive. "Why me?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stopped in a small clearing, lit by a single flickering street lamp. He stepped into the light. My stomach dropped. It was Professor Harlan, my literature professor, the same man I had trusted, the one who had told me to document my experiences and stay methodical. His calm, knowing gaze now felt menacing. "Professor." Why?" I stammered, backing away. "I needed you to see," he said quietly. "To understand. You've been chosen, Sarah, because you're different, observant, curious. You notice things others ignore. That's why I watched you, guided you. You were ready to understand what most students cannot even imagine." I shook my head, disbelief and fear mingling. You've been stalking me? Spying on me? Leaving those notes? The photos?" His lips curved into a small, enigmatic smile. "Not stalking, mentoring, testing. You see, Ravenwood has secrets. Dark secrets. Most students never notice, but you could handle the truth. I wanted to scream, to run, to escape into the forest and never look back. But something in his calm, controlled demeanor forced me to listen. There's a society," he continued, "hidden within the university. A group that studies human perception, fear, and the unknown. We've been observing students for years, identifying those with unique potential. You, Sarah, are exceptional." I staggered backward, mind spinning. This is insane. You terrorized me for, what, some experiment? "No," he said firmly. "Not terror, preparation, understanding. Only those who confront fear, who embrace the unknown, can step beyond the ordinary. And you have." My hands shook. My mind reeled. Every moment of fear, every whisper, every shadow, it had all been orchestrated. And yet, the intensity, the realism, the terror, it had felt real, too real. "Why the whispers?" "The notes?" I asked. "To teach you," he replied. "To make you aware. To show you that the world holds layers most people never perceive. You are ready now, ready to join, to see, to understand." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But another part of me, the part that had followed the whispers, examined the notes, pieced together the clues, felt a strange curiosity. Could it be true? Could the danger, the fear be a doorway to something greater? He stepped closer. "You have a choice, Sarah. Walk away and forget, live an ordinary life, or step into the shadows with me and see what others cannot." The forest behind him seemed to sway, almost invitingly, whispering promises of secrets, knowledge, and power. I took a deep breath. My mind raced through every moment, the nights I had lain awake, the shadows that stalked me, the whispers that called me. Everything had led to this choice. I looked at Professor Harlan, and then at the darkened path into the forest. For a long moment, nothing stirred except the wind and the faint rustle of leaves. Then I made my decision. "I want to know," I said, voice steady despite the fear inside me. His smile widened. "Good, you won't regret this. Welcome to the unseen world, Sarah Mitchell." He extended a hand. I hesitated for a heartbeat, then took it. The instant our hands touched, a shiver ran through me, not of fear but of awakening. The whispers, the shadows, the cryptic signs, they coalesced into clarity. As we walked deeper into the forest, the world I had known, the campus, the dorm, the normal life, faded behind me. Every step I took, every shadow I passed, felt like shedding a skin I had worn all my life. I was no longer just a student. I was an observer, a seeker, someone who saw what others could not. The moonlight filtered through the trees, casting dancing patterns on the ground, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a strange calm, a purpose. The fear remained, yes, but it was tempered with understanding, with the thrill of discovery. Professor Harlan led me to a clearing where others waited. Students like me, those who had seen, who had faced the unseen. Their eyes were intense, knowing, expectant. A small fire flickered in the center, illuminating their faces. They nodded as I approached, welcoming me silently. I realized then that the whispers had not just been warnings, they had been invitations. And I had accepted. The night stretched on, filled with teachings, revelations, and stories of others who had walked the same path before me. The fear that had gripped me had transformed into something else. Focus, awareness, and a sense of belonging to something beyond ordinary perception. By dawn, I stood at the edge of the forest, looking back at Ravenwood University. It was the same campus I had walked before, yet everything felt different. I was different. Nothing would ever be the same again. And though the shadows remained, the whispers continued. I no longer feared them. I had stepped into the unknown and survived. I had embraced the truth lurking in the darkness. For Sarah Mitchell, the world had changed, and now I was ready to see it as it truly was. If you liked my story, then share the video and subscribe to the channel.